Good morning and welcome everybody. It's nice to see you here today. Just going to wait about one more minute. We're waiting for a few more people and then we'll get going. But it is a cold and rainy morning here in Melbourne. I'm in Abbotsford, and of course looking out my window, it's not too appealing, but I was glad I didn't get wet riding to work this morning. So... All right. So how many do we have in now, Tessa?
We've got 42 at the moment.
All right, fantastic. Well, it's great to see everybody today, and thank you for joining us. My name is Kate Lester. I'm the General Manager for Member Engagement and Communications. And on behalf of Tandem, we really appreciate you joining us. And we know today that you will get a lot out of this meeting. So I'll start with an acknowledgement of country. So we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging. We extend that respect to the elders and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We are deeply grateful for the land, water and the rich environment, and for the rich cultural heritage that has been nurtured and preserved by the Wurundjeri people. Their enduring connection to this country continues to guide and inspire us. We honour their history, their culture, and their ongoing contribution to the life of this region. We also want to acknowledge, respect, and pay recognition to those with lived and living experience of carers who support loved ones with mental health challenges. Your bravery, resilience, and unwavering commitment are truly inspirational. We recognise the invaluable contributions that you bring to the table. Your insights, born out of your personal experience, enrich our understanding and shape the way we approach mental health care. Your voices are crucial in advocating for better support, resources and outcomes for all carers and the people they care for. So thank you. And today's session will be recorded. So if you prefer for you not to be on screen, please turn your camera off. If you have any questions during the session, please put them in the chat, but we will have time after the session for you to ask questions. So today we are very privileged to be joined by Fleur Gadd and Kaling Yeung from Neami National. They will shed light on the NDIS Access Project and how it works with families, carers and supporters. The NDIS Access Project helps people with psychological disability along with their carers and support services with accessing NDIS. So Kaling Yeung is a Senior Access Leader and Fleur Gadd is the Service Manager of the NDIS Access team. So welcome both. Thank you for joining us. It's a delight to have you here.
Thank you so much, and nice to see so many people here. 48.
Yeah. So I think that, at the moment, there's a lot of interest within the NDIS sector. So it really is an opportune time for us to come together and to hear what's going on out there. So Fleur and Kaling, thank you. And I'm going to pass over to you now. And we look forward to hearing your presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction, Tessa and Kate, and for inviting us to speak at Tandem Time this morning. I'm just going to sort out the screen sharing on my side and hope that there's no IT issues. Won't be a minute.
And this is always the scary time for anybody that is presenting. Well done.
Perfect. Kate, can you just let me know if that's coming across okay?
Yep, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Perfect. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. As Kate just mentioned, my name is Fleur. I use the pronouns she, her, and I'm the Service Manager of Neami's NDIS Access Project team. I will be taking you through the first half of the presentation today and then handing over to Kaling, who is the Senior Practice Leader here at Neami for the second half of the presentation.
Good morning, everyone.
Perfect. So before I get started, I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I live and work on, which is the Wurundjeri people. The traditional owners of the land I live and work on, who are the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I acknowledge that this land was a place of age-old ceremony, of celebration and renewal, and that the Kulin Nation's people, that the Kulin Nation people's living culture had and has a unique role in the life of the region. I recognise that sovereignty was never ceded and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So the NDIS Access Project is a phone-based service and it's funded by the Department of Health and has been around since 2018. Thankfully, we've just been refunded for another 12 months, so up until June 30 of 2025. So there's 3 organisations funded by the department to offer this program in Victoria. So that's Neami, EACH and AXO. And we'll look at a slide shortly that shows which catchment area each of these organisations covers. But you can also find this out on our flyer, which we'll be sharing around, also on the Neami website. And I believe these slides will also be shared after the webinar today. So the NDIS Access Project assists people with psychosocial disability, so a disability caused by a mental health condition, and carers and support services to understand, engage in and complete the NDIS access process. This is sometimes described as testing eligibility to the NDIS. So we know that not everyone we support will meet the NDIA criteria and meet access. And unfortunately, we have noticed that consumers meeting access under psychosocial disability has significantly decreased over the last couple of years. Our team is made up of 14 intake and assessment workers who work in the NDIS Access Project. They've got a fair bit of experience in the community mental health space. Many of our team have actually been working in the program since it started in 2018. So we've seen lots of different iterations over the years as things have changed with the NDIA and their criteria. And prior to this as well, a lot of our team were working in other programs at Neami. A lot of experience. I think there's someone almost at 20 years at Neami, which is fantastic. Cool. So this slide shows the target group of people that we're supporting in the program. Consumers who are Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander or about to turn 65 are prioritised for support off our waitlist. And it's worth mentioning at this point that consumers case managed by area mental health services are not eligible for this program, as clinical services are also funded to support NDIS access applications. Sometimes it can be a bit of a grey area though, so it's best to speak with them directly, but if you're unsure, we're also more than happy to chat through any particular circumstances through our duty phone line. Cool. So as I mentioned earlier, the NDIS Access Project is funded to support consumers living in Victoria. So Neami's catchment is shown here in yellow. So we cover the northwest through the city of Melbourne and then down to the Kingston, Frankston and Mornington Peninsula area. Each provides services in the eastern region, and AXO cover all local government areas that are in regional and rural parts of Victoria. So this slide shows the NDIS eligibility criteria. So as I sort of mentioned before, consumers must be under 65 at the time the application is submitted. And we will prioritise consumers who are about to turn 65 and do our best to get the application in before their 65th birthday. The NDIA also state that consumers applying for NDIS must live in Australia, must be an Australian citizen or permanent resident, or be on a protected special category visa. So there's more information about those visa types as well on the NDIA website, but our team are also more than happy to chat through any queries that you might have about this particular part of the eligibility. So the NDIA also state that a person applying must have a disability caused by an impairment that is permanent or likely to be permanent, and that the impairment has substantially reduced the person's capacity for social and economic participation. So again, this is the NDIS eligibility criteria, not Neami's, but it's obviously what we have to work with in the program. So this slide uses a flowchart to describe the timeline of support through the NDIS Access Project. I'm going to give a basic overview of this now, and then Kaling's going to go into it in more detail shortly. So previously, it would take around 6 months from being allocated a worker to receiving the outcome of an application that's been submitted to the NDIS. But due to the changes in processes that happened end of last year, early November with the NDIA, Neami, as well as probably everybody else, have been noticing significant backlogs at the NDIA. So now we are noticing that we're working with folks in the program a lot longer due to waiting for extended timeframes. So the largest percentage of referrals into our program are from self-referrals, followed by referrals from other mental health services and community health services as well. Just under 10% of all referrals into our program are from a carer, family or supporter. If the consumer requests this and you would like to, in some circumstances we work directly with the carer, family or supporter as well. So referrals can be made by calling the duty phone line, which is open Monday to Friday from 9 till 5, other than public holidays and also days that our team might be on training. If you're calling outside of the hours, we do have a voicemail, so you're welcome to leave a message and we'll be able to get back to you on the next work day. And Kaling will also go through the referral process in more detail shortly. So accepted referrals then go onto our wait list, and the wait time for support at the moment is around 2 months, but it does fluctuate pretty quickly. Historically, we've had quite a large wait time for support, so this is probably the lowest wait time we've had, so it's a really good time to make a referral. Perfect. So next, kind of just going through the flowchart. So consumers will be allocated to an intake worker who will complete a psychosocial assessment over the phone, and this usually takes about 30 minutes to an hour. So we can offer face-to-face assessments in our Fairfield office if the consumer would prefer as well. So with consent, we will then liaise with current and past supports to gather supporting evidence, and this includes from carers, families and supporters. And we can also liaise with the NDIA as a third party if there's consent to do this as well. We will then collate evidence and prepare the application, which is the evidence of psychosocial disability form. There's a Part A and a Part B on the form. Part A will need to be completed and signed off, ideally by a GP or a psychiatrist. And then once the application is ready, a community connections meeting will then need to be booked with a local area coordinator or an LAC. So in this meeting, the LAC will go through ID verification with the consumer, as well as discuss things like goals, strengths, and supports. So we're able to support consumers over the phone with these meetings or online as well via Teams. And then at this stage, the LAC or local area coordinator will then submit the application. We are noticing at the moment as a team that it's currently taking around 3 months from when the application is sent to the NDIA to receive an outcome of that application. So significantly longer than the NDIA's participant service guarantee, which is 21 days. So with the program as well, our team will make fortnightly to monthly check-ins while waiting for an outcome. So if access is met for the NDIS, we can provide pre-planning or a planning meeting support if required. Otherwise, we'll finish up support at this point. And if access is not met onto the NDIS, we'll step the person through their options based on the outcome letter from the NDIA. So this might include support making a request for an internal review or providing further information. So consumers have 3 months to ask for an internal review of the decision. But for people who are unhappy with the internal review decision, they can also apply to the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, or the AAT, for an external review. This needs to be lodged within 28 days of the NDIS review decision. So we would then, I guess in this circumstance, would refer on to an NDIA appeals service, such as Victorian Legal Aid or VMIAC, as we don't usually have capacity or support, a capacity to support folks with external reviews, unfortunately. And this, again, is just details of how to make a referral to Neami's NDIS Access Project. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Kaling now to provide more information about what happens during our referral call.
Thank you. So as you can see on the screen here, it's just a bit of an internal document that the staff use when they're on duty to make sure that we've got all the information we need to assess whether or not someone can be placed on our wait list. Information we asked is based on the NDIS criteria that Fleur went through before, as well as I guess from our experience, what we know we will need in order to maximise our chances of a successful application. Some of the things that we'll go through include the consumer's mental health diagnosis, how long they've been diagnosed for, some information around their treatment history. You don't need full great detail at this point, just a bit of an overview can be helpful. The application, as Fleur mentioned, needs to be signed off by a treating doctor. So we will need to be asking for their contact details, how long they've been involved, as well as whether or not they will be supporting the application. In our experience, any condition that's been treated or diagnosed for less than 2 years often don't meet the permanency criteria. The application also needs to show that all reasonable and treatment options have been tried or considered. And if not, then we also need to explain why this might be the case as well. If someone's applied before, and we also want to know, I guess, how long ago they've applied and what the decline reason was, so that once we start working with someone, we can try and, I guess, speak to the application decline letter and hopefully cover any of those gaps that was missing. We are funded to assist people with a psychosocial barrier as their primary disability to apply for NDIS, although we do understand that at times there may be other health conditions that impact on someone's life. If the overall impact of the impairment is in relation to another condition, whether it be physical or neurological, then we may suggest to contact another service that might be more suitable to apply for access. Sometimes we might still proceed and go ahead with the application. However, the focus and the view of the application will be from the mental health diagnosis and viewpoint as well. The other thing that we also like to check in is around what the person's looking for under the NDIS. So depending on what they're looking for, if the service is already supplied or available within the community, then it often won't be funded by the NDIS as well. Thanks, Fleur. So this is an example of the evidence of psychosocial disability form that we complete. As Fleur mentioned, there's 2 sections. Part A is completed by the treating doctor. They will be asked to confirm the person's diagnosis, any history of hospital admissions, also information about their treatment, what they've tried, whether or not it was helpful. If a person has both a GP and a psychiatrist who is supportive of the application, in this instance, we will ask that and reach out to the psychiatrist to fill out the report, only because they will hold more sort of weight in this instance with NDIS. We may still ask the GP for some additional information to include in the application as well. Section B is where staff will complete and we gather the information from the intake assessment, as well as part of the information gathering process from current or previous supports. That might include specialist reports, discharge summaries, any letters that we've received as part of that process as well. Thanks, Fleur. This is the section that both the treating doctor and the intake worker will have to write to and comment on, but they need to do this sort of separately. Under the NDIS, the consumer only needs to demonstrate one area of impairment to apply. However, we know in our experience that there's often a lot of overlap. So we will comment on all areas that are impacted and ask the treating doctor to do the same. When we gather, once all the information's completed and we've gathered everything, staff will review all the information before we submit it. This is to ensure that all the information is complementary of each other and also using the correct sort of language, which I'll move on to the next slide. As you've probably noticed by now, the NDIS application is based on a lot of deficit-focused language to show impairment and that these impairments are going to be lifelong. A few of the key words that you've heard and will see throughout the process, such as impairment, permanent or permanency, substantially reduced capacity of functioning. These are some of the language that we'll also be asking professionals to use in their reports and letters as well. It can be confronting at times to read these reports. This is only because that any indication of a condition that's not permanent or that the impact is not going to be lifelong will jeopardise the application. For example, you'll notice we will often write the person is unable to do or unable to do independently rather than have difficulty with task. We have received direct feedback from assessors from the NDIA saying, based on those phrases, that's why they've declined on the report. Is that the person can still do something, it just takes them a little bit of time compared to the person not being able to do something at all and needs support to be able to complete something. As Fleur mentioned before, for a condition to meet access under NDIS, it needs to be considered permanent. This means that the condition needs to have been diagnosed for at least 2 years and that the person has undergone various treatments with minimal to no impact or improvement. NDIS want to see that all available and appropriate treatment options have been considered, and if not, why this is the case. So, for example, NDIS would expect someone with a diagnosis of depression to have considered or tried treatments such as counselling, various types of medication, or ECT. If these treatment options have not been tried, we will need to clarify why. It could be because the treatment was inappropriate, there was side effects to the medication, it made the condition worse. However, this will need to be endorsed by the treating GP or the psychiatrist in the evidence of psychosocial disability form. Thanks, Fleur. So as a carer, family member, or a support person, there are things that you can do if you want to be involved in this process. However, it's not compulsory, and there are often other services that might be able to help. The role of the intake worker is also to take some of the pressure off. So carers don't have to be involved if you don't want to. We're mindful that it can be quite a stressful process in itself. But if you do, there are some things that can help the process, such as speaking to the help professionals, let them know of the intention of applying, asking them whether or not they support it, letting them know that the access team is involved and that potentially we'll be reaching out at some point to gather information and get their, I guess, point of view around the application. As the process has become a lot longer, sometimes consumers can become disheartened by the process and the wait time. It may be helpful to give them some reassurance. And at this point, feel free to give the intake worker a call for a bit of an update if you need As we mentioned, so proof of identity documents are now required as part of the application process. So the consumer will need to present either a birth certificate, citizenship, or a passport, along with 2 other community documents, which include driver's license, a Medicare or a bank card, or a proof of age card. Unfortunately, we don't have brokerage funding to access these documents. However, some services in the community might be able to assist. If you contact Birth, Death and Marriages and explain that the person's trying to apply for their birth certificate for the NDIS and is also experiencing financial hardship, they potentially can waive or reduce the fee down to sort of $30 to $40. You might need to double check, but they might be able to sort of make it more affordable. Thanks, Fleur. And then the other thing that we sometimes might be helpful is to write a carer or impact statement. Again, this is not compulsory, but if you choose to do so, some of the things that you might want to think about is thinking about the consumer's worst day, what that looks like, what supports that you have to offer, how often, any supports or costs involved, and really thinking about from the moment they and yourself wake up to the point of time when you go to bed. And for some people, it might be sort of overnight as well. Considering how the carer role has impacted yourself and whether or not you can keep providing support, what your needs are as a carer or support person, and how that role has impacted you. As we mentioned, the carer statement is not compulsory, but it does help to justify to NDIS why some of the support needs are important, especially if you can no longer perform those roles. The information can also help fill in some of the gaps that I guess professionals don't often see on a day-to-day basis that as a carer or a support person, that you're managing. It's okay to want to maintain your relationship with the person that you're supporting and not be their carer all the time. If you are interested in providing a carer statement, staff intake workers can also help with providing examples, with writing that letter as well. Thanks, Fleur. So this is just additional information we've got here. As we've mentioned, there is currently quite a significant backlog with the NDIA in terms of outcome decisions. Decisions are taking up to close to 3 months. And if you're successful, what we're seeing is that planning meetings can take up to another 4 months to be scheduled. We also know that there are some upcoming legislative changes that are being discussed by the Senate, and depending on what those changes might be, our services will need to adjust our process as well. So there might be some different changes from time to time. These are also some helpful websites that we often check from time to time, because often when there are changes, the NDIS don't promote them. It's usually something we stumble across or, staff find out. And it's often not even on the websites, but they are trying to communicate as much as possible, and these websites can often be quite helpful. Thanks, Fleur. I guess the other thing we are aware of is sometimes that the time might not be right now where we have all the evidence for the application. Sometimes it might be about coming together, having a bit of discussion of an action plan, and then going away and following up with some of those things before coming back and being supported to apply again. We often do provide a lot of secondary consults to different people and services about applications that are not meeting access, and having a look at what might be helpful to be included if people want to reapply. Depending on where the person lives, we can also try and connect them with other mental health services, especially if NDIS is not the most appropriate at the particular time. Some of these services might include the Commonwealth Psychosocial Support Services, mental health and wellbeing local services, or local council services as well. But sometimes it's okay that it might not be right now, but it's okay, and there might be a bit of a plan to come back as well. And that concludes sort of all the information. I guess the key take-home message is just give us a call if you've got someone you're not sure of, you've got a scenario or situation you want to unpack. Feel free to give staff a call. All the duty workers are staff who work in the space, so they know the work really well.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Fleur and Kaling. Great presentation, and I know that because there are lots of questions in the chat. So first of all, I'd like to open it up to everybody online if anybody has any questions, and then we can go through the chat questions.
Hello.
Hello. Yes,
Hi.
sorry, I can't.
Sorry, I just want to ask, sorry. Thank you very much for this. It's very helpful for the overview. I just want to know what happens to consumers who are discharged under the GP management plan and are very content with that and don't want to access any of those other services that you mentioned. Does that mean they will not be eligible for NDIS?
I guess not necessarily.
This is a person with schizophrenia. Schizophrenia, yeah.
Yep. So I guess it really does come back down to the person's presentation, what support needs that they're really looking for under the NDIS. So the NDIS will sort of try and assess what's already available in the community and why, I guess, if there is a good reason why the person hasn't engaged with a particular service. If we can explain why, then
they've been in
NDIS will
compulsory
take
treatment too many times, ma'am.
Yeah,
and she's now over 65. And I don't think she's linked in, and I'm very concerned because I can never care for her anymore because I'm now 67. I've got my own health issues as a long-term carer for 16 years because it took her that long to optimize the new schizophrenia medication. You know, she goes missing, homeless shelters, domestic violence shelters, compulsory treatments. I've got no other relatives, so I am the one, and the other one is my 12-year-old son. So it's a very difficult task, and people like me get impacted. And I don't seem to able to access Carer Gateway because NDIS and Carer Gateway are linked somewhat. Is that right, sir? I mean, ma'am.
I'm not sure. I thought the Carer Gateway was still available to carers.
Only
I
if you're
haven't
ex-carer for 2 years, but I'm now dealing with the long-term impacts of this long caring journey, grief and estrangement from my son, and then health issues, working through all the PTSD because you're busy trying to fix up stuff from the OCD effects on the house, on your relationship. Because I couldn't work, I couldn't do anything. It's audio sensitive. She's audio sensitive, photosensitive. Everything is dark in the house for 4.5 years when she lived with me. So, and you know, no one can come visit. You walk on eggshells. You know, you can't even get calls, incoming calls, or do things on the computer, because everything's affected in the mind because of the, I don't know, the electrical impact, because of voices and all that. So all these long-term impacts, nobody cares. So you're going to have an NDIS eligible criteria of 2 years or Carer Gateway of 2 years because, you know, it takes a long time because you have to reach out to your 12-year-old son who's now become whatever adult and obviously having a lot of issues and drinking a lot because, you know, and other ways of medication because, you know, there's a large part of his life that he's not with me, right?
Yeah.
So how do you deal with these situations? And I can't care. And I think she was discharged with her husband. And if anything goes wrong, the husband that saw him from far because she doesn't want in contact with the family. And what happens then? I mean, you know, I don't know what will happen, you know. Who will look after her for aged care? Who will look after her for everything? So where do you recommend that I go?
I guess
who
without
will help
completely,
will your
without
team help me
completely,
if I ring up?
well, that's what I was actually going to suggest. I guess with being mindful that there are lots of people here and privacy and confidentiality, I would really encourage you to give that number a call. That will help with the staff being able to unpack a little bit more about what is already available.
Yeah, but I'll just be interested in some principles that will help guide me what staff can do.
Yeah.
Because it
So
depends on which staff you speak on. I just need some principles, please.
Yeah. So I guess at the end of the day, our role is to support someone to apply, and we have to play by their rules a little bit in terms of provide those evidence. So what we might do is then look at, okay, what evidence is available. If
we
the
are both
person
now
is
over
only
65, so does that mean that you're no longer eligible?
If you are over 65, then that
and so
unfortunately is.
So where's the next area I should look at? Will you be able to help me to sort out where else we can go? Is that what you're saying, ma'am?
The staff might be able to look into, I guess, local councils and aged care packages. So that might be something that the staff might try and explore with people. Yeah.
I think,
But how about the carer gateway?
I think Kaling, I think, and Angie,
Yep.
I think it'd be worthwhile calling our support and referral line. So our number's in the chat, but I think that they have a huge amount of information in this area.
Right. Definitely, that's for sure. They can help me, is it? Okay. All right. That's
They
all
will
I need to know.
they're the ones who have, you know, the info, have the knowledge
Okay.
and the information. So,
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank
no
you.
All right. Any other questions? Sorry, I can't see hands here. So if anybody's got a question, speak up. Or what I can do is go to the chat. So just give me a minute and I'll go through this. I had a question from Sarah. So just curious, has the service since 2018 always been phone-based?
I can answer this one. So we were funded, to be a phone-based service. But we have over the years had a component where staff have been able to support someone in face-to-face, usually when supporting a GP within a GP appointment, for them to be going through the evidence of psychosocial disability form to support the consumer through that process. We are completely phone-based at the moment, apart from folks are able to come into our Fairfield office to meet to do face-to-face assessments if that's helpful. But we are wanting to open this up again so that we can support folks in the community with those meetings in particular, like at the GP, but also potentially with the local area coordinator during a community connections meeting as well. But yeah, we are funded to be a phone-based service.
Okay, fantastic. Also from Sarah, how do you support and reach people with access who are experiencing homelessness? Does Neami have funding to supply people with phones, for example?
So unfortunately, we're not given any brokerage for anything extra. It's pretty tight with our funding. But we do have a pretty good sense of our catchment areas where we're working and who, I guess, where to go to get what. I've previously been working in the housing and homelessness sector. You know, there's a lot of a wealth of information within the team. But yeah, unfortunately, we don't have funding to pay for phones, but we may be able to suggest where to go or assist with applying for different funds where we might be able to get money for those.
All right. Thank you very much. There's one here about brokerage for treating health. Do you provide that for treating health professionals to provide reports?
So I guess a continuation, we're not actually given brokerage for this program, but sometimes we might have a little bit of funding available where there might maybe be a little bit of surplus from something, in which case when we aren't able to advocate to reduce the fee or waive the fee, we may be able to either do a co-payment with the consumer, but if we are going to be using any sort of money from our program, it is usually for the support letter, because we are noticing that more and more health professionals are charging and at higher rates now than previously. And we know that those are really, really critical documents for someone's NDIS application. So we do try and assist where we can, but it's really tight.
Yeah, understand that. So thank you. Do both the NDIS access form and the evidence of psychosocial form need to be completed?
Applying for the under the psychosocial barrier, we we have been informed by NDIA that it's the best form to use is the evidence of psychosocial disability form. However, if someone does go into a local area coordinator, sometimes they might be given just the general access request form. So that can still occur from time to time, but we as a team use the evidence of psychosocial form because we've been informed by NDIA that that's the best one to use. It's the information, I guess, for them or for the assessors is more succinct, and they know exactly what bits to look for to be able to process and assess the application the quickest.
All right. I think you've more or less covered this one. It's a difficult one. Sorry, my chat seems to go up and down because we're getting more chats along the way. My son didn't give consent and disengaged, and we couldn't step in, and this delayed application, which resulted in the very small package. What happens with lack of consent?
I guess whilst we're supporting someone through the process, we also need the consent. It is a voluntary service and process. If someone has already, I guess, got a package, my suggestion would be then to speak to the local area coordinator and potentially request for a review of plan, where at that point you could provide additional information around why you need more funding. But that meeting, it's not something that we would usually be within that space. So I couldn't give you really detail of what you'd need, but from my understanding is that you can request for a review with additional information and request for a review of circumstances, I think is what they've sort of termed it.
Okay, thank you. And when you have a dual diagnosis, do you choose one condition or use both?
This comes up a lot, and it really depends on the presentation of the information. So I guess another thing that we've learned through our experience is if someone has a diagnosis of substance use, the NDIA will very quickly see that as the main concern, and often say, look, you need to address the substance use before we can assess whether or not the other condition is permanent or a baseline. So sometimes we might tactfully leave certain information out to ensure that we try to maximise our chances. So there has been applications sometimes that we've left out certain conditions, knowing that NDIA, as soon as they see that, they'll put a question mark over it and not actually consider everything else. Sometimes we will include it if the supporting evidence actually speaks to it quite well, why we still and can apply. I hope that makes sense. It just depends on the scenario, I guess. Yeah.
Sure, thank you. We have got a question online. So Anita, you are on mute, Anita. All right.
I can't hear on my side.
No, that's all right. I'll keep asking questions. Do you have experience with individuals with depression and ADHD to access the NDIS?
Yes, we do. That sometimes we may include ADHD. Sometimes we won't. There are within the list of websites that we've given, there are NDIS have a list of conditions A and B that sort of not necessarily are automatically approved and get through, but depending on the level of impairment that the condition is diagnosed, it means that they do meet a base level of access. So sometimes we get some really amazing psychiatrist reports letters that are just gold, and we do definitely use them and put them through, and people have gotten through. Sometimes we haven't gotten that piece of information. So usually once we've gathered all the information, staff will, I guess, have a conversation with the consumer and family member if they're involved as well, in terms of what information would be our best shot in submitting with the application. So it's definitely happened, and we've supported lots of people with that condition or a combination of conditions. In terms of what information goes through, it really comes down to what the evidence we have at the time.
Excellent, thank you. And Anita, I see that you've unmuted yourself, so please go ahead. Thank you. No, it doesn't work. Okay, we've also got Kylie Brown. You have your hand up. Sorry, Kylie, you're on mute. Okay, so I'll ask another question. Oh, my chat just continued. Have you had experience with individuals with an eating disorder apply?
Yes, we've recently had a few people within the team who are supporting people with that condition. I'd have to check our stats again, but I don't know. It's often in combination, eating disorder along with other anxiety disorders as well. So yes, that's a yes. But I guess in terms of the application, it's similar to what I mentioned before. It really does come down to the evidence, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Tessa, could you please help Kylie and Anita to unmute if possible, because they're unable to do so?
I can only ask Kylie to unmute, and I'm not sure what's happening with Anita. She's not on mute, but we haven't got sound from her for some reason.
Okay.
I don't know if either of you could just quickly post your questions in the chat, and that way we can answer them from there.
Yeah, fantastic.
Sorry about the difficulties.
Oh no, it's always technology.
And
Okay.
watching the clock as well, I will say, if anybody, I'll post this in the chat as well, if anyone has a question that doesn't get answered today, if you could email it to us at comms@tandemcarers.org.au, and we'll do our best to get those questions answered before we email the video around.
Perfect. And as well, just I guess referencing our journey line, we do have a couple of staff on every day, so able to chat through particular circumstances.
Hi, Dominic, could you please mute? Thank you. Okay, okay, Kylie has put a question in, just wondering about support for young people to access NDIS. Also, if there is available support to access services and manage supports.
Absolutely, yeah. So we are able to talk through the options for younger folks to go through the access process of NDIS. From our experience and what we're seeing is there's not a lot of young people that are meeting access, often around permanency and exploring all treatment options. It's worth mentioning, I think, at this point as well, some of the staff within our team also work as the access workers, the intake workers for the YOURS program, the Youth Outreach program, psychosocial program, as well as the youth residential recovery services as well. So there's quite a wealth of information and knowledge within the team, so you can feel free to give us a call as well and chat through some of those options that might be available for young people.
All right, thanks for that. We do have a lot coming through. Another comment from Anita is that another organisation said if you mention psychosocial assistance, NDIS dismiss you. Would you agree with that?
As a sort of blanket statement, or
no, I didn't think so.
No. I'm sorry, I just wanted to reread it to make sure I had the question. Yeah. Yes, no.
Yeah, fantastic. Of course. Well, thank you. My daughter is under NEAMS, so therefore she is not eligible for NEAMI. Her caseworker, that is a nurse, has no idea about NDIS.
So there is.
So,
Sorry, Kaling.
sorry, no, I guess usually all area mental health services can assist with applying, and we have heard some feedback that certain clinicians don't see that as part of their role, or don't have an idea or awareness of the process. I would encourage you to try and have a conversation with the clinician, and let them know that it is part of their role to apply. We often speak to different clinical services as well, and we've in the past done some secondary consultations with different clinical services as well. So, and we know that there are, within some of our network meeting, there is a lot of work that's being done to support clinical staff with that process. Yeah, sorry, Fleur, what were you going to say?
Pretty much that, but also it can be a bit tricky, even using the Commonwealth psychosocial support programs as an example. Some of those teams have an NDIS access worker embedded with them, and some don't. So it can be really confusing to know who is around to be able to support the NDIS access process. And again, we've got a pretty good sense, like just internally, we've been keeping a bit of a list of who we know has an NDIS access worker within those clinical services and psychosocial services, and who we know don't. So, if you're unsure and you're not getting anywhere with the service that you're trying to get support for access with, you can also give us a call, and we can see if we can find out if there is an access worker there as well.
Fantastic. This is a bit of a long one. My son has BPD and was given the smallest package. Psychosocial coach has never seen quoted by him. He is laughing in an SRS. I'm finding this one. Maybe we'll send this question through to you, Fleur, and if you could get to Anita, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Feel free to send it through after, Kate, and we'll get back to you on that one.
Yeah. Regarding providing evidence of psychosocial disability, my son's treating professionals have been fragmented over the last two years. What do you do?
I guess part of the intake worker's role is to reach out to the person's current and previous supports. And so we will, and part of that is we request for information, but also have conversations with them as well to try and build a history or a good picture of what treatments or engagements has looked like. So sometimes it might be that, we can still provide a bit of an overview of what the person's already engaged with without needing a letter from every single person. So depending on who we speak to and what information they give us, there still might be an opportunity for us to build that history.
Fantastic. Thank you. Look, I've got a nice one here from Katrina. Thank you for this presentation and space for hearing, for hearing some stories and questions. I really appreciate your sensitivity, acknowledging the deficit-focused language protocols of NDIS. I appreciate your work, dancing in the nuance between real-life complexity and the beast of NDIS. So thank you. I do have a question from Amber. If you could unmute yourself, great.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, I'll just lower my hand. Yeah, I was just wondering if someone is on work cover for an injury and has, other conditions, but that's ending. Are they available? Are they allowed? Can they access the service?
Definitely, they could. So the NDIS will look at a few things. Firstly, what the work cover will pay when that wraps up, what that, I guess, even though, with some basic baseline sort of things in place, what the person's current state functioning looks like, and then assess to those criteria as well. So, and we've definitely seen people in the past apply whilst they've still had work cover, but work cover you know, certain things, and then NDIS covers certain things.
Oh, so you can be on both.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, definitely. As
Okay.
long as there's no what they call sort of double dipping, or that they're no not both services are not funding for the same thing, because NDIS right now, and what we're seeing is that they're not really funding psychology sessions anymore.
Or psychiatrist sessions.
So you know, there might be other services that fund those supports, whereas NDIS fund other things. So yeah, definitely.
Okay. Thank you.
It can happen.
Great. Thank you.
And thank you for asking that question. Thank you to everybody that posted questions online, or also spoken to us today. To Fleur and Kaling, you've been amazing. So thank you for joining us. We couldn't get to every question, so what we'll do is get those questions sent out to you, and we can distribute the answers. But of course, Fleur and Kaling have been kind, and they have provided the numbers to focus up to send questions to, or you can call their office. But absolute pleasure today. I love Tandem Time because it always creates so much discussion, and I think the NDIS presentation today from Kaling and from, sorry, Fleur, I think from Fleur was really informative and well presented. So thank you so much, and we will see you soon. And to Kaling and Fleur, we'll be in touch with you.
Awesome.
And if
Thanks so
anybody,
much.
Thanks for having us.
anybody's got any questions about topics they'd like us to cover on Tandem Time, please get in touch with us. All right. Have a nice day, everybody.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.